Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We should be all things swimmingly. Here we go with a tune. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to... Give me a second, just give me a second. Welcome back, folks, to the channel. I'm your faithful host, Mr. Jack Christie. We have had a very eventful day today. We've been celebrating my parents' wedding anniversary today. So I've been down to Kinross. And we've had a lovely meal in Milnathort. Seen my brother and his wife. And we have then went for a walk at Loch Leven in Larder. So it's been really lovely day. Been cold. Been very cold. But been really lovely day, being honest. And feeling thankful. Feeling very grateful. Today, I want to talk about a few things. And one of the main reasons I want to bring this or the aims of this channel, or what I think is the aims of this channel at the moment, is, yes, I want to play some music, tell some stories, maybe some travel, but ultimately, for some reason, I see this space, certainly in social media channels, it's Scotland, look at it, it's amazing. And yes, it is, but there is also, like, its faults, like every other country. But there's a lot of the emphasis of sight. What is happening? What is the hills, the castles, all the usual stuff. But one of the things I want to try and do with this one is sort of community-wise, I want to try and... Scotland, ultimately, I think, is a feeling. And it's a feeling of national identity, or certainly part of my identity, partly through music. We've got a strong sense of fiddle music, strong sense of different types of dance music. We've got obviously pipe bands. So there's a strong sense there. There's a strong sense of identity with our food. There's a strong sense of identity with our land. But there's also a strong sense of identity with our history. Castles, clans, tartans. But also part of that story is emigration. And there's lots of Scottish communities that through Highland clearances and other parts of our history that have moved to different parts of the world and continued the Scottish story or the Scottish way of life there. And there's been a great influence in on that. And ultimately, that's what I want to try and see, is share different stories of the ultimately Scottish identity or the Scottish story. Bring Scottish folk from past and present and success stories elsewhere potentially in the world. And that's one of the reasons why I played that tune there. That was My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. Because we're going to be going over the ocean as part of this show. And we're going to talk about emigration to Nova Scotia, which is New Scotland in Canada, but also to Cape Breton, also to Australia, America, also New Zealand. And today we're going to talk about the little town of Waipu, which is in the Northland of New Zealand. Yes, no Scottish sounding, originally of Maori words, but a lot of Scottish Highlanders, through a series of various boat trips, leaving from the Highlands via Ullapool, went to Canada, and then sort of through the story down to South Africa, over to Australia, and one of the last stops was a place called Waipu. Now, why is that so Scottish? And in particular, the person that led this, and hopefully I'll show you there, was a man named Norman MacLeod. And this is him right here. Norman MacLeod was a Presbyterian minister from Scotland and led significant settlements of Highlanders in Nova Scotia and then ultimately Waipu in New Zealand. He was born in Clachtoll, which is in Assynt, in the sort of northwest parts of Sutherland. And at 27, he went to the University of Aberdeen to study a Master of Arts degree, and then was awarded the gold medal for philosophy, and enabled him to go into ministry and guaranteed into the presbytery. So he had to go to Edinburgh to do his theological course. But before going to Edinburgh, he married his childhood sweetheart, Mary MacLeod, and he had long been with her, or long been associated with her, and would accompany him on his travels. So, through a number of different things, clearances, discussed breakdown of relations when he went down to Edinburgh, ended up going back to Wick, but ultimately got on a boat from Ullapool west towards Canada, Nova Scotia. And I'm just wanting to show you a little bit of the map migration of Norman MacLeod. So from Ullapool, went over to Pictou, Nova Scotia, St Anne's, Cape Breton Island, then down to the Cape Verde Islands, just west of South Africa, down to Cape Town in South Africa, Adelaide, Melbourne, Auckland, and the last place was Waipu, New Zealand. Now, Waipu, as it says there on the screen, is a small town in Bream Bay in the Northland region of New Zealand. The Scottish town has a lot of Scottish heritage, primarily to this. So that's how far north of the Northland Waipu is. Very small town, and I actually was there when I did my travels to New Zealand. There it is in respect to Australia and Auckland. So Auckland was the main one, and then they went north for a last trip to which is called Bream Bay, and Waipu is the little town in here. Now, Waipu has a Scottish Migration Museum. Now, 2 years ago, I went there, didn't know about it, and found out some more information about it. Almost 1,000 people completed this remarkable migration to New Zealand, and they set up the task of establishing the community, speaking Gaelic, in the town of Waipu. The community of St Anne's grew under Norman MacLeod's leadership, and he was the guy that was tasked with setting up the school, setting up with the church, setting up the town planning. All of it these days would actually go to specific departments and a team of people the vast majority of it was done with Norman MacLeod. So there's a few things I actually want to show you this bit on the Waipu Scottish Migration Museum. Alas, after many trials, determination, persistence were rewarded. Compared to Scotland and Nova Scotia, Waipu was a land of great opportunity. Alas, the community had found land with great potential. When news of Waipu reached those who had remained in Nova Scotia, others decided to migrate, and 4 ships were prepared for the journey. Some families still stayed in Nova Scotia. There was a famine at the time, and it was heart-wrenching time for those left behind, and they lost kinfolk and many of the community's leaders. In a sad letter, John MacLeod wrote, "We never experience to the full how far sorrow has made an inroads upon us until we come home after absence to places where we have once been happy and find our friends' former residents occupied by people that we know not care not much about them. While we recognise each old familiar object, we see no longer those who give them all their value in our eyes. Every inanimate thing speaks to our eyes, but where are those who won't to speak to our hearts?" That was an excerpt of a letter written by John MacLeod, joiner of Nova Scotia, to his dear friend Murdoch Mackenzie of Waipu, New Zealand. The first ship to make the complete journey from Cape Breton to Auckland was the 217-ton brig Gertrude, built on Prince Edward Island. She was purchased by John Munro and reconditioned for the trip. She arrived in 1856 with 176 people on board. And next came the Spray in 1857 with 96 keen settlers. She was purchased for the trip by Chone Alex and Archibald Stewart and Angus Matheson. Then the 24-ton Breadalbane arrived in 1858 with 160 more people for the settlement. She was built and owned by Charles Campbell. Finally, the largest fleet, Ellen Lewis, arrived in 1860 with 235 new immigrants. Almost 1,000 people completed this remarkable migration from Canada all the way down to Waipu. Isn't that nuts? Establishing a close-knit and successful community in Waipu and other sister settlements. Today, the descendants number of their tens of thousands. The remarkable Waipu migration has descendants all over New Zealand and now the world. Those connections continue to be celebrated. In the words of the late Prime Minister of New Zealand, Sir Peter Fraser, New Zealand has many records of the adventurous voyages and trying experience of its hardy and courageous pioneers. Each successive settlement has its history in the early trials and vicissitudes of tremendous difficulties and failures preceding success. But none excel the story of the Highlanders of Waipu. Isn't that amazing? Now, Waipu, I was there, as I said, 2 years ago, and was actually staying in a couple of miles south, randomly, in the town known as Mangawhai. And it's about a 20-minute drive just south of Mangawhai, also on the east coast of the Northland. I was primarily there for golf at the time, and took a trip up to Mangawhai Cove. Now, let's see if I can actually show you that. So there's Mangawhai here. Mangawhai here, and Mangawhai Heads. Drove through to what was called Waipu Cove. Beautiful beach. Let's see if we can show you that. That's the Bird and Hen Islands out there on the east coast. That's further up in the north. Just beautiful chilled place. Just perfect. Perfect conditions for the beach and surfing. And yeah, so we then went up to Waipu on the 29th of December and randomly saw this Scottish Museum Heritage Museum. Wandered in, and across the road was also Caledonian Park. Wandered in, there was going to be a ceilidh on New Year's Eve on Hogmanay. So, would you like to come? Yes, we'd love to come. So, let's see if I can show you this photo. It would have been a couple of days before. Went to a random ceilidh on New Year's Eve in the random city known as Waipu. So there we are there. There was us doing an Arcadian Strip the Willow. That was the buffet. Sausage rolls, some ham cheese croissant. That is supposed to be haggis. I mean, it never didn't taste like haggis whatsoever. And that was the set. Main sort of dancing systems with some very old hat, strange ones that I've never heard. The Waves of Bream Bay. I mean, Bream Bay's there, so that evidently they made up ones as they went over and continued, and it must be continued tradition in New Zealand. They said the famous thing is that they have a New Year's Day Highland Games. That's one of the biggest things in the calendar on New Year's Day in the whole country of New Zealand, the Waipu Highland Games. So, would you like to go? Yes, of course I would like to go. So, there's ended up playing on the actual stage, the main stage of the Waipu Highland Games. I've got videos, but they've actually on my hard drive, so I'm struggling to find them. So yeah, that was me playing the fiddle on the Waipu Highland Games. Now, if I skip back, the Waipu Highland Games is so big it actually has its own website, because it happens every year. The Waipu Highland Games, the 153rd, happened this year, and is one of the longest running Scottish gatherings in the Southern Hemisphere, as it says, offering fierce competition, spectacular entertainment, and a full day of family-friendly fun. Fun. Run by the Waipu Caledonian Society for over 150 years, with all Games Day proceeds continue going directly back into the local community. There's a clan procession, there is the usual games, there's a pipe band walk-in, there's clan walk-in. Yeah, it is the full real deal.
Skolder, New Zealand middle distance runner champion, as well as several Auckland provincial title holders.
The original. So, one thing that I'd like to pay good attention to, obviously, they've got clans down there, the continued success. The current town is a tourist town and is a commuter town for the bigger city of Whangarei and Mangawhai Heads. Majority is very similar lifestyle to up north in terms of crofting, sheep farming, and forestry. And the Waipu have a Waipu tartan. Now, as you probably saw, there was parts of that there. Let's see if I can show you that. There we go. There is the Waipu tartan. See if I can open that in a new tab. There we go. The Waipu tartan, right there. That's purple with yellow, red, and there's some green and there's some blue in it. So there's a rich variety, and that's along beside the Cape Breton tartan. And so much so, I enjoyed it that, give me a second. I got a tea towel of the Waipu tartan. Isn't that nice? I actually think it's an outstanding tartan, being honest. And, yeah. So, that is my little story of the town and viewership of Waipu, the Highland Games of Waipu, and a little bit about the history of the immigration, and more particularly the man of Norman MacLeod that made it started. Hope you've enjoyed that, and we will see you in another video. This is, as I said, I want to try and bring different stories from different places that I'm finding out. If anybody sees this and has other stories that they know that would benefit from sharing, we'd love to hear from it, and we'd love to share it. But for now, I hope you've enjoyed this, and we will see you in a new one. Tomorrow is going to be my last live stream for certainly talking about it in this way. I'm actually going to Ireland on Tuesday and seeing a fellow Celtic brother down in Cork. So we'll try and see if we can do some down there, but definitely tomorrow we'll do one, same again. We'll go for 8 o'clock tomorrow night, and yeah, we will see you tomorrow. Thank you very much. We will see you. All the best. Slán